Hey guys, it's Jans. Welcome back to another episode of Path to Profit. Y'all, I don't think I've ever recorded an episode so fast because we have to talk about what is happening in e-commerce news today, okay? So today we're going to talk about what it really looks like to build a brand with intention. As of today, Hailey Bieber, her skincare brand, Rhode, has officially been bought by e.l.f. Cosmetics for $1 billion. Yes, you heard me right. 1 billion with a B. Anytime I hear billions, I'm like, my heart starts fluttering a little bit, right? But there's so much we need to talk about in this episode because y'all, it's going to be a good one, okay? So, first things first, this brand is only 3 years old. It's built on 10 core products and led by a founder who just basically understood the assignment from day one. And now she done sold this business for $1 billion. Like, I'm flabbergasted. And what's really wild to me is that this is happening in the middle of what the industry insiders are calling a celebrity beauty bust. There are tons of celebrity beauty brands that are failing. A lot of celebrity beauty brand owners are trying to sell their companies to larger brands, and they're not able to because these larger brands aren't seeing the value in doing so. So there's a ton of celebrity brands that are basically, let's say, doing the same thing, if we're just saying from a product standpoint, that Hailey Bieber is doing with Rhode Beauty. However, they can't seem to find success. So we got to talk about it, right? So one thing I want to know is that although Hailey Bieber is technically a celebrity, obviously, I want you to hear me loud and clearly when I say that celebrity did not build this brand. Strategy built this brand. It's 3 years old. I don't care how many other celebrity owned brands we see out there. There are a number of them that have been around for significantly longer than Rhode has, and they have not been acquired. They are not touching the bees, okay? Not touching them billions, okay? So the truth is, there are thousands of small product-based business owners as well that are out here selling, the same types of products, same price point, so on and so forth. But the problem is that these small brands are doing the very opposite of what Rode did. And I feel like I really want to talk about this in today's episode because a lot of what they've done is super simple and they're very small changes that you can make as a small business owner selling products, and it's ultimately just what works best in 2025. So I got a bunch of notes sitting here in front of me because we have a lot to talk about and I have got to stay on track. Okay. So I'm sure you're wondering why Rode succeeded in this way while others are failing, completely stalling, going out of business, so on and so forth. Well, this episode is going to unpack Rode and actually how it built a path to profit. Look how that lined up, but really like a path to acquisition because profit and being acquired, two totally different things. And I really want to unpack a lot of the big mistakes that I see small business owners making as they try to do all the things with no clarity, no positioning, and basically no real plan for, what they're trying to accomplish. So let's hop right into it. Okay. So, first things first, I have to be real with you guys. Most product based brands that I run into, and as y'all know, I run into a lot of them as an online business coach, they are trying to build brands with basic things, a logo, a cute brand name. They launch a bunch of new products, or they think that they need to launch a bunch of new products on a regular basis. They're posting content every single day here and there, maybe not as consistently as they need to. They're hoping that something goes viral. They're maybe running a sale way too often than they should, or running them without strategy or without reason. And they're just rinsing and repeating this lack of strategy. So I need y'all to know that launching a store is not the same thing as building a brand. A lot of time or lately, I've been talking about how there's a statement that, if you build it, they will come. And I think a lot of people were misled by that to their own fault. The key word in that statement is building. Building takes time and it takes intentionality. And I think that that's one of the things that stood out for me as I, analyzed this acquisition of Rode, right? Something that really stood out to me is the fact that this acquisition isn't about Hailey Bieber's celebrity. It is about the fact that this is a brand that has clarity, that is implementing strategy, but it's not like crazy big strategy per se. And ultimately, they're just executing on something that works. So while Rhode has the advantage of being co-founded by Hailey Bieber, of course, it's still a brand that stands on its own. And that's something that's really important for me to say because as small business owners, oftentimes we are the face of our brand or we're trying to run the business without our face. And we kind of need it at this point in business. So we're going to talk about that, of course. So when I say that this brand is a brand that stands on its own without Hailey Bieber's, presence, here's how I know, or things that I look at to come to that conclusion. If you take a look at their Instagram bio, it says one of everything really good. There's nothing crazy about that statement, but what it is a bold, confident positioning statement. Every brand should have a positioning statement. Theirs is one of everything really good. And so if you look at the brand, going into my next point, they only have 10 core products. Yes, they have like, different colors of the lip glosses and the lip sticks. I think they have lipsticks. I'm not sure. They have different colors, but the core products, there's only 10 of them. That's it. And here's what's even crazier. Last year, reportedly, they made $212 million in net sales from them 10 products. 10 products, y'all. They've done all of this also with content that doesn't even feel overly produced or unattainable. It just feels extremely real and it features real looking people. Like if you look at the page, like if you need to pause here, go look at their Instagram page. It doesn't look like they're doing anything too extravagant, too crazy. It looks very attainable over there. And so what that tells me is that this isn't just about selling skincare. They're selling trust. They're selling an attainable aesthetic. They're selling an identity that I don't want to say it to make it sound like it's easier than it is, but like this is something that we can do as small business owners, okay? It's not that unattainable at all. So, another thing that I think is important for me to say is that the brand is doing exactly what works for 2025 and it's what brands should you guys should be considering for 2025. If you are trying to stay in business in 2025, these are very simple, straight to the point things that Rhode did right and you are likely doing wrong. So, let's summarize. The first is going back to them 10 products. They have laser focus with just 10 core products. A lot of brands are struggling to succeed because they have way too many products that they're trying to bring attention to. And when you struggle with marketing to begin with, and you got 50, 100, 150 different products that you're trying to get out the door, you're always going to be struggling trying to figure out what to promote, when to promote it, how much time, energy, effort, money to give to one thing over the other. But if you only have 10, you're forced to get really good at marketing the 10. And they've done that. They also have a really clean aesthetic. So, not to say that you can't have a bold, bright, crazy, fun aesthetic, but more so to say that the cleanliness makes it a little bit easier for them to manage. When they start working with influencers and UGC creators and things like that, it's a lot easier for you to give them direction and give them, guidelines and what you want them to create when your aesthetic is as clean as can be. You don't run into, in my opinion, you wouldn't run into a lot of instances where you feel unhappy with the quality of what you received if it's clean. Like, who's going to do clean wrong, On top of that, another huge thing that I think they do really right is that it's UGC heavy. So if you don't know what UGC is, UGC stands for user generated content. And basically, it's not influencer content. Influencer means this person has an audience and they have the capability of influencing their audience to buy something. But UGC creators are just content creators. And, it may or may not be someone who's new to content creating. But the point is that they're either paying these people in free products on a regular basis or paying them in money on a regular basis. They're giving them some type of direction as far as what they want them to create. And this gives them a lot of flexibility. I don't think that's the right word. I want to say variety. That's the right word. It gives them a lot of variety in what they're able to post. And of course, as a skincare brand, you want to be able to show your products on a bunch of different faces, a bunch of different races, ethnicities, and things of that nature. This next point is something that I think is really important to note. Rhode is founder led, but it is not founder dependent. A lot of small business owners are either founder dependent, meaning every single post is you. And I get it, budgets are limited. And oftentimes, if I'm just being honest, our creativity is limited. Our mindsets are limited. We think it's my brand. I need to be the end all be all. I need to be all the departments. I'm wearing all the hats. I totally get it. But if we go back to the previous point, UGC creators, you can actually hire content creators and pay them in product. Now, I'm not going to say everybody's going to accept product as payment. That's not always going to be the case. But if you wanted to have variety in the faces that show up in your content, it sometimes is as simple as just gifting product to someone, plain and simply. But going back to the point, it's founder led, not founder dependent. That's really important because when you build a business that's based off of you and dependent on you and your presence, when and if you get to a place where you want to step away, if we think about Rhode, for example, if this whole entire brand was just Haley's face all day, every day, I guarantee you it would have been a lot harder for them to decide to buy or for Elf to decide to buy it. Because when and if Haley decides she wants to step away, or let's say she has another baby or whatever, if she decides she doesn't want to do this anymore, the brand is dependent on her presence. So because they have so much variety in faces and they have, the means to be able to hire other faces and put other faces in place, it works. So founder led, not founder dependent. The last thing I think is noteworthy is that every product post and partnership that they have is aligned with one thing, their brand promise. So if we go back to that statement that I mentioned that's in their bio, one of everything really good, even when they're partnering with, other brands and things like that, it's still, in my opinion, coming back to what they intend to do, which is create a very simplified skincare routine at the end of the day. So, in my opinion, this is exactly the type of stuff that most small brands are skipping. And honestly, it's typically because they just don't know, lack of awareness. So hopefully you're listening very clearly to this episode because I'm going to do my best to try to make you aware of where you're probably falling short. But most brands, in my opinion, and in my experience of working with small brands, they just don't know what they're promising. Every brand needs a promise. You need a brand promise. What is it that you're promising to the consumer? You also need to know who you're promising this thing to. So if you're promising clean skincare, cool, but who wants clean skincare? And making sure that everything that you do, everything you say, everything you offer aligns with that promise and that target audience. A lot of the brands I run into, they are, for lack of better words, just selling a bunch of stuff and hoping that it works. And then they wonder why it's not selling or why no one's buying. It's because you lack brand promise or brand positioning. You lack a brand promise. You don't know who your target audience is. You have no structure, no reason, no purpose, no intention in why you're doing the things you're doing and how you're doing them. So the point here I want to make is that your business needs purpose and structure if you want it to succeed at the end of the day, okay? Now, a few other things. I got a lot of things, y'all. Oh my God. A few other things that are worth mentioning are that Rove feels extremely young without feeling gimmicky. I think a lot of times when we think about youth, I don't know how old y'all are, but I'm 35. And am I 30? Yeah, I'm 35. When I think about, my age, I still consider myself to be young. I'm a millennial, but obviously we got Gen Z, I think is that the young folk these days. It feels very young, but not so young that it's Gen Z, if that makes any sense. I don't feel like it's made for a teeny bopper. I don't feel like the brand is targeting a 14-year-old, but it could work for a 14-year-old just as well as it would for a 34-year-old, just as well as it would for a 45-year-old, so on and so forth. So I think they do a really good job of keeping it young, but also keeping it what word could I use here? I'm struggling with my words today. I think they do a really good job of making it inclusive without screaming inclusivity, if that makes any sense. Hopefully that makes sense. So another thing I think that's most important to mention is that the brand is just very strategic without it feeling overly staged. There's a lot of brands that I follow that everything is like this big massive like AI generated crazy something that they created because they want to go viral. And I don't get that from looking at this brand. They're not necessarily, in my opinion, seeking virality. They're just seeking to be strategic and always align with their brand promise at the end of the day. And another thing is that even when Haley shows up in the content, it's not overly glammed. It's not like a full-blown campaign with Haley wearing some designer right off the runway outfit, so on and so forth. A lot of times it looks like she's just like getting ready, or it's just like her applying her lip gloss or like doing regular things. It's not a $1 million campaign. And I think that's so important to note because in a world where like perfection at this point, in my opinion, perfection feels very exhausting. It's not the thing that people are drawn to anymore. I think that that type of intentional realism is extremely refreshing. And I think that that is why it works. Again, the brand feels very attainable to the regular person. So I think that one thing that, or the big thing that I want to sum up here is that Rhode really understood that founder-led marketing is one of the strongest brand plays that they could use, or that any brand could use right now, especially when it's done with authenticity. I think that's the big component here. And again, it's not founder dependent, it's founder led. They understand the importance of having Haley's voice and Haley's presence there on occasion, but they also see the importance of not making the brand be overly dependent and reliant on her presence. Yeah. All right. So y'all, I cannot stop coming back to this 10 product thing. And the reason I can't stop coming back to it is because this is something that I was able to see very clearly in my own brand. Now, granted, I'm not in the millions and billions, whatnot. I've made me a cute little 1.1, almost $1.2 million. Shout out to me and my hard work and my efforts. However, one of the big things that I'm able to see, even looking at my data, is the amount of my revenue that came from a very small number of products. There are 5 key products in my business, maybe 7, if I'm thinking about it clearly, that make up the bulk of my revenue. So a lot of times when people, talk to me about my brand, or when my students come into my program, they are saying to themselves, I've sold everything that you've sold, or, I bought from the same vendor that you bought from, so on and so forth. And while that may be true, the thing that differs is the fact that I understood the importance of finding something to stick with and finding something to build my brand around. So many of you, if you've been here for a while, know that there was a specific pair of sweatpants that I kind of just sold over and over and over again. Like, I got so sick of seeing them, but they worked. And I would have been a crazy person to have stopped selling them. So I think the point I want to make is that focus and strategy are really important. And I think Rhode had, or has, focus, strategy, and ultimately proof that you don't need a huge, deep product lineup, or a wide, let's say, you don't need a wide product lineup. You need the right product lineup. You need to go deeper in something, not always wide. A big mistake that I see so many product-based business owners making is that they think that they need to go wider. And the ironic part about that is that oftentimes they haven't found something that works for the brand, and they just keep adding on new SKUs, new products, new categories, and ultimately making it a lot harder on themselves to stand out and ultimately find, or um, ultimately create something that their brand is going to be known for, right? So I think it's important to say, or to note, that Rhode isn't trying to be everything to everybody. They're extremely clear on who they're for and how they want to show up. And you should get really clear about who you are, or as a brand, who you are, and ultimately how you want to show up. Every decision, from their packaging to their pricing, their partnerships, all of it is aligned. And I want y'all to really sit with this and ask yourself, am I building something that's clear, or am I building something that is cluttered and confusing? Because that is honestly how I started. And if I can be honest and admit that to y'all, I didn't start with clarity. I started with what I thought was cute, but it wasn't clear at all. It was very cluttered. It was very confusing. And it was confusing to me because when people would come and say, oh, tell me more about your boutique, or what do you sell? All I could say was, I sell women's clothing. I couldn't define what my brand promise was. I didn't have one. I couldn't define who my target audience was. I would tell them, it's a girl like me. What does that mean? How do I even describe myself? Right. So, big point. I think that this sale robe being sold to Elf really proves that clarity scales, and it scales big, like billion big, crazy, absolutely insane. I can't believe it's $1 billion, y'all. This is insane. Okay, now we got to talk about numbers, and more specifically, like business logic, because numbers are really the key. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I've never bought a business. And if I were going to buy a business, the most important factor in me deciding to buy that business would be the numbers. And I'm not talking about the number of followers you have on Instagram. That is not important, in my opinion. So let's talk a little bit about the numbers. I did some research, like real research today, y'all. In their most recent fiscal year, Elf did $1.3 billion in sales for the year. $1.3 billion in sales. I don't know if y'all buy Elf products, but the products are cheap, very cheap. And they made $1.3 billion in sales in the last year, in the recent fiscal year. Here's the kicker. That's up 28%. But also, it's a slowdown from their previous 77% growth, meaning it was way more than 1.3 billion at some point. Isn't that crazy? Now, the cool thing about this is when a brand comes and buys another brand, they're buying it for a reason. They're not buying it for fun. Basically, Elf needed a new source of momentum, and Rhode brought them that. Rhode is basically a brand that's bringing a lot to the table that I don't want to say Elf doesn't have for themselves, but it creates a new road to success, or let's say path to profit. I like that. It creates a new path to profit for Elf as a profitable brand. So a couple of things that Rhode brings to the table are a highly engaged Gen Z and millennial, mostly Gen Z though, Gen Z audience. Brands want that right now. I mean, they're the future. I don't know if I feel good about that. I don't know. Anyway, they're the future. And so they bring this highly engaged Gen Z audience, which is going to be super beneficial to Elf as a whole, as a brand. They also have these 10 high performing products or SKUs that are priced between $18 and $38. So Elf is an attainable brand or affordable brand, depending on how you want to, describe it. So is Rhode, but they're a little bit higher priced for certain products. In addition, they're also a lifestyle brand, not just a product brand. I think that's a huge component that adds value to Elf as a whole, as a brand. When I think of Elf, I really only think about the products personally. I don't really think about it as a lifestyle brand, but when I think of Rhode, I think of it as a lifestyle brand because it's a product that fits into our lifestyle. I don't know if you guys have seen the iPhone phone holder cover, I don't know, that Rhode offers. It fits the lip gloss. Their lip gloss fits into the back of this phone case. That's what it's called. Phone case. That's a lifestyle product. My phone is a part of my lifestyle. They have found a very unique way to incorporate their product into my everyday lifestyle. Crazy. Like even that alone is like, wow, genius. Something so small. Crazy. Now, here's what I don't want y'all to gloss over. Maybe y'all don't know it. Maybe y'all ain't read this. This is the part that really got me. So, this deal was $600 million in cash, liquid. That means that Elf I don't know how much money they still got in the bank, child, but they had $600 million just in the bank available to be given. Insane. When I think about my brand these days, I truly think about it from a monetary standpoint. I am always thinking about the money. I'm thinking about the money. I'm not thinking about them followers. I'm not thinking about no engagement. None of that. I'm thinking about how can I make sure that cash flow is flowing at all times. Even as I think about my rebrand and the decisions that I'm, making in real time and the future success of my business, I'm thinking about cash in the bank and making sure that I'm making the smartest possible decisions to ensure that I always have cash flow. So this deal was for $600 million in cash, $200 million in shares, and then a potential $200 million earnout. And what this means, the $200 million earnout, this means that Rhode still has tons of room to grow, and Elf is betting big that they will actually grow. I mean, I wouldn't buy a brand if I didn't believe that they were going to grow, but $200 million, that's just a lot of money, y'all. It's a lot of money. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. So I think that this sale tells us a few things. It tells us that profit isn't always the end game. The overall value of your business is sometimes the end game, especially if your goal is to sell that business at some point. And in order to sell a business, you're going to have to be very intentional about every move that you make. You got to get real smart and savvy and strategic with how you're making decisions and the actions that you're taking. It also tells us that you don't need more to win. You don't need You don't need. You could want to add more products to your assortment, but you don't always need to add more products to your assortment. And if you're going to add more products to your assortment, there needs to be alignment. It needs to make sense with the overall brand that you've built thus far and the other products that you already sell that already work very well. And the last thing that I think that this sale tells us is that the founder's vision, when executed clearly, is the most powerful marketing tool there is. Rhode is Hailey Bieber's vision for that brand, and it's being executed every single day. Again, it's only been around for 3 years, but if you look at it over the course of the 3 years, it's only gotten better, but it hasn't changed. It doesn't feel far off from how it started, if that makes any sense. So Hailey may be famous, but she showed up like a founder and stood 10 toes down for her brand, as she should, and as we also should. So I need you to ask yourself, am I doing that? Am I standing 10 toes down for my brand? Or am I hiding behind my product hoping that it sells itself? Because a lot of y'all are hiding. We're not even going to say standing, hiding behind your product, hoping that it sells itself. You're not ever showing up, very rarely showing up. You ain't never opened your mouth and said a word. You ain't never went live. There ain't no voiceovers on that page. Your voice just never occur. It's like you're invisible. It's like you're a ghost. That is not going to really fly in 2025. I'm going to need to see you step to the front. Okay. Now, I want to give y'all some lessons in all this because I have a lot. I have a lot of lessons, but I'm gonna stick to 5, maybe 10. We'll see. I don't know. I've got a lot in front of me. I know it's very easy for you to look at this or hear this story and say, well, she's famous. This is impossible for me. Not impossible for you at all. Again, to reiterate, this has nothing to do, I don't want to say nothing. It is not because she is a celebrity, because we've seen plenty of celebrity brands flop. Also, Hailey Bieber is a young girl. She ain't seasoned out here. She's a young girl who has had a brand for 3 years. There are people who've been in business for decades that have not accomplished what my girl has accomplished. So what is it actually that worked here for my good sis, Hailey at Rhode? Here are 5. We're going to stick with 5. Here are 5 things that I want you to take away from this. Number 1, you need to start focused. Again, reiterating those 10 products. Am I saying that you should only have 10 products? No. What I am saying is that you probably have way too many at this present moment. And if you haven't taken the time to clearly define what your brand is and who it's for and what your brand positioning statement is and all those good things, you likely have a bunch of products that really don't make sense for your brand, really don't make sense for your audience. Again, they've been super focused, very dialed in, 10 products. They've only been in business for 3 years. They made over $200 million in sales last year. You don't need more things. You need a better strategy, point blank, period. The second one is to step to the front of the line. Put your face out there. In 2025, if it's not going to be your face, it needs to be somebody else's face. I follow a lot of brands who have content that is led by an individual who is a representation or a representative of the business, not the founder, but having a face that people can resonate with and recognize on their feed is really, really important. So founder-led marketing really, in my opinion, isn't optional anymore, at least not for 2025. It's kind of essential. And honestly, if you're not showing up in your content here and there, even just putting yourself on a schedule for how often you will show up, I think is helpful. Whether you're known or not, whether you're popular or not, people buy from people. And I'm sure you've heard that before. It means even more in 2025. People buy from people that they feel connection to, that they feel a connection with, okay? Number 3 is a big one, and it's honestly a big one for me as well. I think I do a really good job of this for the Boutique Academy. I did not and have not done a great job of this for my online boutique. You want to plan for visibility in real life, not just on the internet. Rhode didn't just post content. They actually showed up in real life. They've done, some really cool pop-ups. When the CEO, I think it was the CEO of Elf, spoke about this acquisition of Rhode, one of the things he brought up was this pop-up that they did in LA, that Rhode did in LA. And he talked about how people camped out overnight to make sure that they got into this pop-up the next day. So they're not even just looking at how this business is performing online. They're looking at how this brand shows up in real life, right? So again, Rhode wasn't just or isn't just a social media brand. They actually show up in real life. They do pop-ups, they have in-person experiences and activations. They have intentional partnerships. I think they did a partnership with one of the Kardashian Jenners, Kendall Jenner's tequila brand for Coachella this year. Very intentional partnerships. And I think it's important for you to know as a small business owner that you can have in real life activations and pop-up shops and events of your own, and they don't have to be super expensive. You can start local. You can start with the people in your own community. It just needs to be an event or an in real life experience that makes sense for your audience. That's the bigger point. The fourth thing that I want you to take away is that your job is to create demand, not just supply inventory. A lot of y'all are just supplying inventory every week, every 2 weeks, every month. You got something new, but you're struggling to sell the things that came before the new. That means that you're struggling to create demand. So adding more products into your mix, into your assortment without understanding and knowing how to create demand for your products is not going to help you. That goes back to where I was saying, are you standing behind your product and expecting to sell itself? That is what a lot of people are doing. They're saying to themselves, if I could just keep pushing more new products out, the demand will create itself. That's not how this works. So I think things that I want to point out with Rhode is that their simplicity in their branding overall, plus how they market their products, it creates desire without it being like this big massive, campaign. People don't just want the products. They want the look, the feeling, the glow. When they look at how the product looks on a person's skin, they're like, dang, I want my skin to look like that. Very simple. Very simple. UGC creators, get you some. The fifth thing that I think is worth noting is that you want to think bigger from the start. I wish that I could go back to day one and think bigger. If I knew what I know now about branding and marketing and just online sales as a whole, I would have thought so much bigger. I would have went bigger, harder, sooner. Most small brands only plan to sell stuff. That's it. That's all. They're like, if I could just make $100 a week, and this is verbatim, y'all. I literally talk to people in my DMs every single day of my life, and people will say, if I could just make an extra $100 a week, I would be happy. Why in the world would you be happy if you could just make a extra $100 a week? Point in case, not point in case, case in point. If you bought this inventory and you keep bringing in more new inventory and you're looking at the inventory that you have left over, you typically have thousands of dollars in inventory in your possession. Why on earth would you ever be okay with only making $100 per week? It doesn't make sense to me. The math is not math at all. So I think a lot of times small brands are just hoping that they make a sale. I can't even say they're planning to sell. They just hope to make a sale. But Rhode, in my opinion, I don't know if this is the case, it's only been 3 years and they've been acquired. I feel like that was planned. In my opinion, I feel like Rhode planned to be acquired. They did all the things that they needed to do to create a brand that was acquirable. I don't know if that's a word, but yeah. So I think that means that their decisions were made with scaling in mind, not just surviving. And when I look at a lot of the brands that, come to me for help, that join my program and things like that, oftentimes when they come to me, which shout out to them for coming to me, but oftentimes when they come to me, they're in a state of survival. And it takes us a long time to get them out of this mindset of survival. They're just like, I just need to make enough to cover this thing. I just need to make enough to buy this thing, rebuy this thing, restock this thing. Like they're just surviving. And I really hate that for y'all. So as a coach, I see a lot of huge mistakes from brands every single day, and they typically aren't the type of problems that brand owners think that they have. People will say, I have a sales problem when they actually have a branding problem, or they'll say I have a marketing problem when they really have a branding problem. They'll say they have a branding problem, but the branding makes sense. I can see what you're trying to do. I'm listening to what you're saying, and it makes sense. It's just not coming across in the marketing. People are often very unclear about what their issues actually are. And so a few of the mistakes that come to mind that I see on a regular basis are, first, lack of positioning. I think that Rhode came out of the gate really clear. Simple skincare, glazed skin, a minimal clean girl vibe. And that's basically it. It's nothing like if Haley were standing next to me and I asked her to tell me about her brand, I would assume that she would say it's simple skincare, glazed skin, minimal clean girl vibes. And I would know exactly what she means. Like when someone asks you to tell them about your brand or explain to them what you do or what you offer, who it's for, you should be able to say it in a few short words. So I think that everything from Rose packaging to the product names to the founder-led content supports the simple skincare, glazed skin, minimal clean girl vibes. You have to ask yourself, am I clear about what my brand is and are the things that I'm offering and the things that I'm doing in alignment with that? Most small brand owners have no real positioning. Your positioning is you being able to say what your brand is, what it offers, who it's for. It's not clear who your product is for. It's not clear what promise you're making. It's not even clear why this brand exists. Why is it here? Why did you create it? So when people land on your page or your profile or they scroll and then they leave, it's not typically because your product is bad. It's typically because there's no message that's really pulling them in. They don't feel at home. They don't feel a connection to what they're seeing because you didn't curate it intentionally at the end of the day. Another big mistake I see is lack of product focus. Again, 10 products, $200 million with just 10 products. The big point I want to make here is that when you streamline your product assortment, it makes marketing easier, it makes inventory smarter, it makes your storytelling sharper because you're not all over the place trying to sell a bunch of things all at one time. A lot of small business owners launch with way more products than they can effectively market or manage, and then they just hope that something sells every single day. Well, unfortunately, when everything is the focus, like everything is equally important, which is what I find to be the case for a lot of people, they're like, all of my products are important. Sure, but when you look at it from a value perspective, from a money perspective, from the perspective of how much money you would make if you sold it, how much profit you would make if you sold it, things like that, they are not created equally at all. So if everything is your focus, that means nothing is getting the spotlight. Something needs to get the spotlight if you want to create demand, which ultimately is going to help you to create consistency in your sales. So, as a result of having way too many products being the focus all at one time, you, as the brand expert, marketing expert, salesperson in your brand, you end up being overwhelmed, overstocked with a bunch of the wrong products, and basically unclear about what to do about it. And that's a problem. I see it every day, every single day of my life. The third big mistake I see is believing that branding is just what something looks like. People are always asking me about packaging. Where can I go to get better poly mailers and prettier boxes and the postcard to go inside of the package and all that good stuff? Well, if you look at Rhode's aesthetic, it's super simple, but it's not just about being pretty, right? The brand as a whole reflects a deeper brand identity, which is fresh, modern, accessible luxury. That's it. It's super clear, it's consistent, and it's recognizable. And you want to create that for your brand. It doesn't have to be the fresh, modern, accessible luxury, but it does need to be clear, consistent, and recognizable. So ask yourself, am I creating a brand that has those attributes? What I see a lot is that people get stuck on the visuals. A lot of times when people come to me and they know that they have a problem, the first question that they ask me is, can you look at my Instagram or can you look at my website? They want me to look at the visual nature of their business. It's not always the visuals. I see so many people who hire brand designers. They get the fonts, the color palettes, the website designers. They're in Canva with the best templates, so on and so forth. But they never figure out their messaging. They never figure out their voice or what their brand actually stands for. And that is the problem. That's the biggest problem. You could have the cutest looking, I don't know what, anything, cutest looking ads, content, website, email, so on and so forth. But if the message or your voice is not hitting home, if people don't feel that connection with your brand, it's not going to stick and you're likely not going to get sales. So the big point here is that pretty isn't enough. There needs to be substance. We need substance in what you're doing and how you're doing it. Okay. The fourth mistake is marketing without intention. I think I've thrown the word intention around quite a bit in this episode, but If we look at Rhode's marketing, it's super tight. Their feed isn't every other color is pink, every other color is gray. The marketing is more about the overall story or message that's being conveyed through what we see, right? So whether it's a founder video or a user generated content post or a user generated creators post, a campaign, a pop-up, whatever, everything points back to that same message, that clean skin, uh what do we say, clean beauty vibe. That's literally what we see all throughout their page. So in contrast, when I look at a lot of small brands on social media, they are posting memes one day. They got a quote that says Happy June and with some flowers in the background, Happy Monday. There's a random flash sale the next day, and then there's this random reel with no caption. And then when I go to their feed, the reel doesn't have a thumbnail. It's just a black box on the feed, as if I'm supposed to know what's behind the black box. It don't make sense. No campaigns, no clear stories, just a bunch of content or not enough content. And I don't know who needs to hear this, but content without context doesn't convert. Let me say that again. Content without context doesn't convert. We need context, okay? Context is important. The last mistake that I see often is lacking brand vision beyond your feed. Just to summarize again, Rhode didn't build just an Instagram brand. They didn't build just a TikTok brand. They did pop-ups. They built retail partnerships. I believe they just mentioned that by the fall, they will be in every Sephora in the United States and then expand it into the UK. Like, that's vision, having a bigger, greater vision for your brand and actually working towards that. They created in-person activations. I think that, what I'm saying is that they move with expansion in mind, even very early on. 3 years. Like, it's only been 3 years. Some of you listening to this, myself included, I've been in business for November will make 7 years. And I'm just looking at and listening to and watching what's occurring in front of me. And I'm like, wow, I could have did bigger, better things. My brain is so open right now. My creativity is overflowing because 3 years is crazy. But again, these are just some big mistakes that I see on the regular. I've worked with a lot of brand owners who stay stuck in the mindset that, virality is success. And if I just could have one viral post, like if I could just get this one post to go viral, my whole entire business will take off. That is literally what people think, which is why they always want me to look at their content and tell them what I think and things like that. I need y'all to hear me clearly. Social media is really important. It is. Like, it's a free marketing channel. You'd be crazy not to utilize it. But if you're not thinking about your brand beyond the content you post, you're literally limiting your potential. There is so much more world out there beyond social media. You could be collaborating with other brands. I always tell the ladies in my program this. We have this community of hundreds of people that you could be collaborating with. Y'all could be doing things together to make money together. You could be pitching your brand to various publications, utilizing PR. PR is still alive and thriving. It's never going to go anywhere. You could be hosting your own events locally. Basically, you could be building your brand in real life and not just assuming that the only means to an end is for you to be on social media or for you to go viral. That is 100% not true. So all of that, you know, expanding outside of social media, in my opinion, is going to help you to create connection with your audience. And connection is really what you need, because connection is what builds brands, period, point blank. All right. So let's wrap all this up because my mouth is getting really, really, really dry because I've been talking. I had a lot to say. This is really what I mean when I talk about a path to profit. This whole statement has really become like my, I don't know, my mission in life is to help everybody create a path to profit. You do not build a $1 billion brand on accident, my friend. You don't build $1 million brand. I'm actually, you know what? I think you could build $1 million brand on accident. I've seen it. I've seen it happen a couple times in all actuality. Billion, no. Mm-mm, mm-mm. You don't build one of those on accident. You don't build a sustainable, profitable business by doing what everybody else is doing either. So you don't have to copy what everybody else is doing. I tell a lot of people this, the girls who come to me and say, I did everything that you did and I didn't make the same kind of money. I don't know where I went wrong. You went wrong because you didn't have a business of your own. You were trying to copy mine. That don't make sense. The truth is that profit has a path. There is a path that one must take to acquire profit. It may look different for, individual different brands, but it's a path. It's a journey. It is not, and it's not linear either. It's not going to be very straightforward. So if you're skipping the hard parts, the positioning, the messaging, the visibility, the nurturing, the ads, the content creators, the influencers, the retention, so on and so forth, you are not on that path. Period. I hope I'm not hitting on nerves. If you're skipping the hard parts, people will tell me sometimes, I'll never forget, someone said to me, why is your program so long? I went to an event this weekend. It was 2 days. Why do I have to be in your program for however many weeks? And I get it. We want our results fast. We want our success tomorrow. But profit takes time. It takes time, and it takes positioning, messaging, visibility, nurturing, and retention. Period. So if you don't have those, again, you're not on that path. The journey is not going to be perfect. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be quick. Or maybe it will be if you're Hailey Bieber. 3 years. Shout out to my girl. But I really want y'all to know it doesn't mean that you need celebrity connections or influencers with hundreds of thousands of followers or anything like that. The journey just needs to be built with intention. There needs to be purpose and true meaning in what you're doing. And you need to be gutsy enough to stick it out. Like the number of people I've talked to this year who have quit or who are like, I'm coming back from a 3-year hiatus or whatever. Like, I get it. Life happens, things happen, life throws you a curveball. I know. But y'all got to stick things out, okay? Because there is way too much money to be made out here. This industry, e-commerce, is like a $7 trillion industry or something like that. Long story short, there's a lot of money to be passed around within it. And you need to come get your cut. But you can only get your cut if you're building with intention, okay? So my advice to you guys is to focus, show up, and strive to build something that people don't just want to buy from, but that another brand may want to buy entirely. Because I don't know about y'all, but that's what I'm on. That's the time that your girl Jance is on in 2025 and beyond. When I decided to, push pause on my brazen game and go back to the drawing board, I literally said to myself, how do I build a brand that has purpose, that has connection, and that ultimately somebody might want to buy from me one day? That is what I'm building. Okay. And the last thing that I want to say is if you're not sure how to start that kind of brand or fix the one that you already have, you know where to find me on the internet, okay? So come talk to me because I want to talk to you about creating your path to profit, all right? So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. This was a fun one for me. I literally just dropped everything and hopped in front of the computer like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. You have to talk about this. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. As always, I would love to hear your feedback. If you're listening on Apple, please leave us a review. I would love to hear your thoughts about the podcast thus far. If you're listening on YouTube, comment and tell me your thoughts. If there's anything you want to hear more about, you want to learn about, you hope that I do an episode about, let me know. I would love to take you guys' suggestions. And yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I will chat with y'all in the next episode. See ya.